Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video I will be taking a look at my updated wildcard draft ahead of Game Week 8, including a couple of different variations that I'm deciding between. Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we're going to be looking at my latest wildcard draft ahead of Game Week 8, but also, of course, a couple of the key decisions that I'm trying to figure out before we reach the deadline on Saturday. Starting off in goal and in defence with my first version of the draft, Pope and Dubravka have kept their place since my original video. I think with Pope, whilst the fixtures aren't amazing over the next few, with a goalkeeper on a wild card, I am planning for the long term. So if I just quickly switch over to the live screen here, I'll use Dan Burn. I've been trying to farm value as an example here. So the fixtures for the next few, Brighton, Fulham, West Ham, Brentford, they're all right. But I'm not expecting 3 or 4 clean sheets out of those. It's more about the long-term fixtures here, where I don't really want to be making a keeper transfer all the way through to the second wild card. And they've got good fixtures all the way through to about game week 24. In that time, the only red one on the ticker is Man City at home. And Newcastle's defence, up until this point, has been the second best in the league. Very good data, under 1 XGC per 90. So I'm very happy to go with Pope on a wild card. At least one Newcastle defender, I think, needs to have a place on my wild card. And I think Pope at his price seems to be the most sensible. The alternative would probably be David Raya, who is quite expensive now. We'll come on to Arsenal in a moment. Or maybe Robert Sanchez, who is a bit cheaper in that Chelsea defence, who does also have good fixtures. But at the same time, I'm not wholly confident on their ability to keep clean sheets consistently. Whereas with Newcastle, I have been very impressed with their defence. Dubravka also keeps his spot because I am looking at bench boosting. It will be important to have a playing keeper. At 4 million, though, I just don't think you can go wrong, and I don't think we need to overthink that one. Moving into the defence, I have kept double Arsenal defence in this draft. Gabriel and Timber. Now, Gabriel, I think, is just an obvious auto-include on pretty much everyone's wildcard. He is a bit more expensive now, but the goal threat's great, in a great defence, and he has been picking up the odd DEFCON as well. Although, with good fixtures, I think that will probably drop in likelihood. So he's in. Timber completes the Arsenal double up defensively. Now, he is a slightly riskier pick, but I broke down my thoughts on him in detail in the who to buy video earlier on this game week. And I do kind of think the risk is worth taking. The upside is very high on Timber. He's playing in very advanced positions in and around the box for Arsenal. They've got good fixtures coming, and I just don't think Arteta's going to want to rotate in the league all that much, given what's at stake now. They are obviously top of the league. It's early days, but they are going to want to win the league. They're not going to want to rotate. And Ben White has just not been that great this season. So I think Timber is in that first 11. He might get the odd rest, but he'll start the majority. And I think that odd rest is worth taking when you think about the attacking upside that Timber has. And obviously the defensive data is very good as well. So I'm happy enough to take the risk on Timber. He's only a little bit more expensive than David Raya, who will consistently be a 2 or a 6 pointer. Whereas Timber, I think the upside's there. So I think I'm going to go with Timber alongside Gabriel on a wild card. Senesi holds his place. I will just quickly move back over to the live screen here for Bournemouth's fixtures. They're not great over the next few weeks. I mean, those next 4, Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Man City, Aston Villa, I'm not expecting clean sheets realistically in any of them. They might grab 1 or 2 if they're lucky, but it's more about the DEFCON for Senesi. I don't need to play him every single week, given the structure of my wild card. And again, a bit like with Nick Pope, it's not about building a squad for the next 1 or 2 weeks. It's about building it with the intention of holding as many transfers as possible up until the next wildcard. And once game week 11 is out the way, and Aston Villa haven't been great in attack either, by the way, but once that's out the way, 12 all the way through to game week 18 is a great run of fixtures, including West Ham, Sunderland, Everton, Burnley in there as well, Brentford. It's not a bad run, and Senesi has been fantastic on the defensive contributions. So I think he's another player that is just a fairly safe, secure pick on a wild card. Anderson as well, similar logic, good on the DEFCONs. After the next couple of weeks are out the way, he's got some good fixtures and can rotate in quite nicely every now and then. And then finally, Rodon is the other one I want to talk about for just a moment. I think if you don't have a bench boost left and you're looking at a player that needs to play this game week, maybe you're not fancying Senesi away at Crystal Palace, for example, then Alderete at home to Wolves would make a lot of sense as well. And he's great on the DEFCON. But Rodon, because I've still got bench boost left to play, he's got a good fixture not only this week, where I could play him ahead of Senesi, but also next week with West Ham at home in game week 9. So he's playable in those fixtures, but also with Leeds, they've been a pretty impressive defence so far. Again, I'll just switch back to the live screen one last time for this section. If you take a look at their defensive data, their XGC per 90 across the first 7 fixtures, there were 2 fixtures where they conceded a fair chunk, Wolves and Arsenal. Obviously, they got battered in that fixture. But in every other fixture, they've conceded less than 1 XGC. That's very impressive for a promoted club. And if I switch over very quickly to Solio, they also have Leeds as a top 6 side defensively for the next 5 game weeks. They're expected to get 1.39 clean sheets projected over the next 5. That's only behind Liverpool, Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, some of the very good, reliable defences. So to have Rodon at 4 million, 4.1 now, but I got him slightly early, just seems like ridiculously good value for money for a team that are expected to keep a few clean sheets. So I do like Alderete if you don't have a bench boost left and you want to play him in game week 8, but because I do, Rodon makes the cut for me. So moving into the midfield, not too many changes since my last draft. I think the first 3 are pretty much locked into my wildcard. That is Saka, Semenyo and Sarr. Now, we've already talked about Bournemouth's fixtures. Next few don't look great on paper, but I think Semenyo in high transition games, which I expect them to be, he'll still benefit and he'll still get plenty of returns. So for me, he's an absolute lock. Ismaila Sarr as well. Again, the fixtures over the next couple might not look great on paper, but the Arsenal fixture, the Bournemouth fixture, again, I expect to be quite end-to-end, and I think he's the sort of player that can benefit from that. The underlying data is great, the minutes are looking good, and he's playing almost as a secondary striker alongside Mateta. Long-term, the fixtures are pretty decent as well. So Sarr and Semenyo, I think, are pretty much locked in on a wild card for me. Saka might not be quite as locked in. I do still have some doubts over his long-term fitness because we've seen him break down a few times now, but he looks fully fit right now. He got 90 minutes before the international break, and given that they don't really have any major alternatives at right wing, I think his minutes are going to be pretty secure for the next few game weeks, and I only really want to hold on to him until about game week 12 anyway, because that's when I am likely to want to get back to Mohamed Salah. Now, that's not a guarantee. I might not go there, but I want to at least have a position in this side that I can get to Salah fairly easily. I still need to find 4.5 million here, but at least having Saka or Palmer or Bruno, someone a little bit more expensive, makes that jump across a little bit easier when we get to game week 12 or game week 13. So Saka's in for me. I do have him ahead of Gyökeres at the moment. I don't think Gyökeres is a terrible pick, but I think Saka now at least has the most routes to points out of all of the Arsenal players. He's on half of the set pieces. He's obviously got great open play goal threat, and he took the last penalty. That, in my mind at least, means that it's his decision as to who takes the next penalty. He might gift one to Gyökeres. It's possible, but I think that the decision lies with him. So I'm fairly confident with him on a wild card. If he gets injured again, if he breaks down, then I will probably move the funds down to Bruno for a couple of game weeks before I then go to Mo Salah. But I only really need this spot for 4, maybe 5 game weeks before I start looking at Liverpool players once again. The final 2 players that have changed since my first draft, Enzo and Ndai. Enzo, I think, has crept in because we now know a little bit more about the Palmer injury. We don't expect him to be back until November. But because that's just been an ongoing concern, I still wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him before the next international break in game week 12. Or between game week 11 and game week 12, rather. So that's a 4-game week stretch. And Chelsea have a fantastic fixture run in that time. Again, I'll just go back over to the live screen quickly, move across to... Yeah, we'll use Caicedo. So the next 4 fixtures, Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, Spurs, Wolves. And then if I want to hold on to him for game week 12 as well, Burnley after the international break. And to be honest, even if Palmer is back, it's not like Enzo's going to turn into a bad option overnight. He's still going to get good minutes. He might not have penalties anymore with Palmer back in the side, but he'll still be getting fairly advanced. He might drop a little bit deeper. but I don't think he's going to be an awful pick, even with Palmer back in the side. So I think he's really good value for money for the meantime. Even when Palmer's back, I don't think he's a fire sell. There are some doubts over fitness, considering he pulled out of international duty after the first match and came home a bit early. But I think that's something that I'm just not going to worry about. I checked the estimated timeline on the specific injury that he pulled out with, and it's about 2 to 3 days, and he pulled out on Saturday. So I think they've just not taken any precautions. They've sent him back early. It was a friendly that Argentina were going to play. I have very few doubts about Enzo's minutes in game week 8. And even if he isn't fit, I've got a big enough or a stacked enough bench that I'm not too worried. And I still think he's good value for money over the next stretch, even if he was a doubt in game week 8, which, to be honest, I don't think he is. Finally, Ndai is back in on my wild card. This is the position that I've got most hesitation about in my midfield 5. I do just wonder or worry that getting rid of Ndai might be a little bit of a knee-jerk move, considering he's played really well so far. He's on penalties. The data's not amazing, but he's only 6.5 million and he will continue to tick along. The fixtures aren't bad after Man City's out of the way either. And I do just wonder whether getting rid of him now might just be a little bit of a silly decision, considering he's actually not done really anything wrong for me. So he's still in because I've got the money to do so. But I do like the slightly cheaper options like Paqueta or Minter as well. They're also in my thinking. We'll come on to Minter in just a moment's time as well. So Ndai is in. He's on penalties. He gets good minutes. The data's not bad. And the fixtures after Man City's not bad either. I think in this draft, I'd probably bench him in game week 8. And it gives me a really strong midfield 5 that I probably won't want to touch all the way through to about game week 12, when I'm going to want some free transfers to shift funds across to Mo Salah potentially. Okay, so last up, let's look at the forward line before looking at a few alternative versions of this draft. Let's start with Calvert-Lewin, because I don't like him as a pick, but yet he is in my draft, which seems a little bit counterintuitive. I think for me, it's the best of a bad bunch at this sort of price point. As you can see, I've only got 0.1 spare. So my options are realistically Calvert-Lewin, Foster, or just kill the spot altogether and go with Mark Giu, for instance. Now, Mark Giu is a player that is in one of my versions, and I'll talk about him in a moment's time, but I do have bench boost to worry about. And if I've got a non-playing striker on my bench, that kind of ruins any chance I've got of playing a bench boost in the next couple of game weeks. And Calvert-Lewin, say what you want about him, but he is getting 90 minutes. He is potentially on penalties, and he's got a good couple of fixtures. Now, obviously, I can't bench boost in game week 8, but he is playable away at Burnley ahead of maybe Ndai, and I could go with a 3-4-3 for one game week only. Game week 9, he's got West Ham at home, which is a good enough fixture that I'd be happy to have him as an 8th attacker on a bench boost. And then after that, I would look at getting rid of him, and I just don't have any interest in playing him because I honestly don't really have much faith in him as an FPL pick. I'm just hoping to spike some good luck, some good fortune in the next 2 game weeks, whilst he is still fit and in the starting 11 for Leeds. Again, I'll reiterate, I don't love him as a pick. If I had a little bit more spare, I might be tempted to move that position up to a striker I've got a bit more faith in. But in this exact structure, it is Calvert-Lewin, Foster, or a dead spot. And a dead spot for me, unless I look at using a bench boost much later on, is just not really an option for me. So unfortunately, it is the best of a bad bunch. I don't have much faith in him. I know he underperforms his XG massively, but he is probably just my 8th attacker that's usually on my bench for now. And I would be selling him after game week 9 is out of the way, probably to help fund Salah down the line in game week 12 or 13. However, let's put a pin in Calvert-Lewin for now. Let's talk quickly about João Pedro Haaland. In fact, let's not even talk about Haaland, because that is just the most obvious pick of all time at the moment. I did toy around with trying to include Salah on this draft as well, who also has good fixtures, but having both just seems too expensive. Haaland just seems like an auto cap most game weeks. He's in fantastic form, and there's just no way that I'm brave enough to go without him. João Pedro is a player who we've discussed a fair bit on my channel over the last couple of game weeks. He's not been in great form. He has been carrying a little bit of a knock, and he's had that rest over the international break. So I hope that he's back fit and firing ahead of Nottingham Forest. And then he's also going to get another rest in the Champions League in midweek because he's suspended for that as well. So game week 8 and 9, I think he's relatively secure. And then as we explained with Enzo, Chelsea do have some very good fixtures. So I back him to get back to his best when he's fully fit and when Chelsea have 11 men on the pitch, which hasn't always been the case recently. So João Pedro, I think for me, is probably a lock on a wild card. I do also like Jarrod Bowen, though. So I am tempted to maybe either find the funds to upgrade Calvert-Lewin to Jarrod Bowen, or maybe look at Bowen instead of João Pedro. But I just don't think that sits right with me. I think João Pedro, he's well owned. I expect him to do well. I think it'd be forcing it for me. So João Pedro is in on a wildcard draft at the moment. Now, as I mentioned, I do have two alternatives. They're very slight shifts with a couple of players difference, but neither of them have Calvert-Lewin in, which might be the main appeal. So let's go and take a look at those two alternatives quickly now. Okay, so version 2 would involve getting rid of Calvert-Lewin. Hooray. I think we're all very happy about that. And moving up Calvert-Lewin to Thiago. Now, Thiago doesn't have the best fixtures coming. And if I was looking at bench boosting in game week 9, which is currently the plan, kind of outline plan, it's Liverpool that week. So it's not great, although Liverpool haven't been watertight at the back. And he is a striker who we think is on penalties. He's getting decent minutes. His data's not bad. Is it the worst thing in the world just to bench boost with him against Liverpool? I don't think it's terrible. And the way that I would afford that is by downgrading Ndai to Minter. Now, I really like Minter. The underlying data is good. The minutes have looked really encouraging so far this season, which was always the problem last season, that we just didn't have enough faith that he was going to consistently start and get 90 minutes. This season, I think Hertzler's got a lot more faith in him. And after Newcastle, he's got some good fixtures as well. So in this draft, I'd probably play a 3-4-3 this week with Thiago ahead of Minter. Minter playing Newcastle is not a great fixture, of course. But then afterwards, it's quite difficult to figure out how I'm going to structure week on week, because I've got a pretty strong playing front eight where I've got penalty takers. I've not really got any really cheap assets here that I would see as a bench asset, like a Calvert-Lewin every single week. So I think once bench boost is out of the way, I'd probably want to downgrade either Minter or Thiago just to give myself a bit of an easier decision every single week. So maybe booking a future transfer there. But I do like Thiago, not loving it on a bench boost in game week 9, but Minter and Thiago over Ndai and Calvert-Lewin. Let me know what you think. But it is worth noting that I can't start both of them every single week. So it's more about the combination and trying to find a rotation that I like. Whereas with Calvert-Lewin and Ndai, I think Ndai I just start most weeks, and Calvert-Lewin is probably just sat on my bench outside of the bench boost. Okay, so I do want to quickly run through one final alternative that I am considering, and it is playing on my mind whether or not this is a better way of playing it. Although I do have a bench boost, I am considering just ignoring the bench boost for the time being, maybe looking at it after we get those 5 free transfers around AFCON, probably around game week 17, when a lot of the cheaper assets have decent fixtures. And I will probably have a bank of 4 or 5 free transfers and no problem with budget, because Mo Salah will have been sold by that point, if I even have him in the first place, because he's off at AFCON. So effectively now, if I am to play it that way, I don't need to worry about bench boost for a little while, and I can just downgrade that forward spot from either Thiago or Calvert-Lewin to Mark Giu, who I don't expect to play all that much. I do have a sneaky feeling he gets a few minutes over the next little run, though, because Chelsea's fixtures are pretty congested. They've got a lot of fixtures in the next block, and Giu hasn't been brought back for nothing. So I do just wonder if picking him as a 4.3 million dead spot bench asset, I might just get a bit lucky, and one week we might hear that he's starting, or he gets his way into the starting 11 as a forward for a week or two. Don't expect it to be a permanent thing, but I wouldn't be stunned if he got some minutes at some point. And they've got a good enough run that if he does get some minutes, he would be a really good value pick at 4.3 million, especially if I wanted to bench boost. So I do just wonder if, rather than Calvert-Lewin, a player that I just don't love, I don't really want, Thiago, who I've got hesitations about the minutes and also the fixtures, if I just go with Giu and maybe just forget about the bench boost unless I get lucky with a rare start from Giu, that might be a way of playing it. And then I can use the extra funds from downgrading to maybe not go with Rodon in my backline and upgrade that to a Crystal Palace defender like Mark Gahey, who has been really good on the attacking returns so far. I think that will continue, maybe not at the same rate, but he is definitely that focus in set piece situations, and he's getting the flick-ons, he's getting the knockdowns. I think he'll get a few more attacking returns, and Crystal Palace are a very good defence that I would like some coverage in. So Mark Gahey is a player that I'd quite like to have on a wild card. I can't quite afford it with my first 2 drafts, but if I did downgrade that forward spot, I could afford him and also have Ndai in my midfield as well. So I've got a strong midfield 5. I've got a playing 2 up front with 1 bench striker. And then I've also got the option to play 4 at the back some weeks. I could even play 5 at the back because they're all relatively strong defenders there some weeks if I've got a crisis. So I do quite like this setup, but it will always leave me with at least 1, if not 2, DEFCON defenders or pretty high upside defenders on my bench every single week. So I don't know if it's an optimal way of playing it, but I am tempted to do so and then maybe just figure out the bench boost later on down the line when I've got a few free transfers after the AFCON free transfers come in. And when some people are saying, oh, don't think about doing bench boost so late, what I would say is Game Week 17 hasn't got the problem of a congested fixture calendar either side. You've got, I think it's the Carabao Cup the midweek before, but not too many teams are going to be playing in that. And then it's a full week either side between a Premier League fixtures. So I don't think rotation is going to be too much of a problem that week. So yeah, I don't love leaving it that late, but it is playing on my mind that maybe that's the way to play it. So let me know what you think of the 3 drafts that I've presented, which ones you prefer, and if there are any players that I haven't spoken about today that you would at least want to consider on a wild card. I'm sure I've also thought about them myself. I just can't talk about all of them in a 15-20 minute video, unfortunately. If you have enjoyed today's show, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time as we check out my ultimate guide ahead of Game Week 8.